and the rabbi slash Bible commentator Onkelos in his take of the Torah and Gerim. Okay. Introduction. Off the bat. Let's look at my notes. Pardon the eye contact with the camera. When I get my notes, then I will engage. Onkelos. Who is Onkelos? When you walk away from this class today, you should have a very, very great appreciation for who Onkelos was. I know it's one of those names of rabbis that sounds very odd, right? It's not Rabbi Yossi, okay? It's who is Onkelos. In short, Onkelos is a Ger. It's not so clear if he converted or if he was a Ger non-Jew. But for whatever it's worth, he was a Ger, and again, whatever it's worth. And he is going to bring down for us essential Ger Torah that is unprecedented. And I think you'll agree by the end of the class. Thus, the next topic is Ger. We're going to be discussing all about the Ger. You can say that we always do. But this is real Ger Torah. Not Agadata or fancy midrashim and fancy footwork with the Ger. This is real Ger Torah. What I mean by Ger is it's going to come into code, and by code we were talking about what is a Ger Tzedek, who's the Ger Toshav, and what does it mean the Ger of your gate. And what we're doing differently today is it's the Onkelos Ger Code, and you'll see that it's a completely different ballgame. The difference is Onkelos has a different vernacular and vocabulary than we're used to. And it's very much like, when you hear about algebra and you want to solve math problems and equations with algebra, and then you bring in like the new technology of calculus when calculus came out. I remember when I was a math student in college, I wasn't that great at math, but I was in an algebra class. I did my Ishtadlus. I wasn't horrible, but my roommate at the time was a math major, and so he was an expert in calculus, and I really could not figure out a problem. I knew the vicinity of what I was supposed to do. He brought in calculus, and we weren't supposed to have a decimal point, and his answer had a decimal point. I was saying that I'm going to fail. You're giving me an answer with a decimal point. He said, no, I gave you the real answer. Algebra doesn't yield the answer here. This is the real answer. So I'll never forget that. And the Ger Code as we know it, or knew it, was algebra. And calculus is going to be the Onkelos Ger Code. So it's the advanced Ger Code that really has the precision, pinpoint accuracy to bring a brand new revelation to the world. Nothing short of that. So let's go. The first question we have to ask, and always about this topic we have to ask, who was Onkelos? It's a very strange name. I remember when I bought my Chumash, I'm sure everybody out there probably at least has or has seen the Art Scroll Stone Chumash, right? So standard in that you're going to find the Onkelos commentary. Most Chumashim do, but it's prominent in the English. If you look at it, you say, what is Onkelos? Right? First you learn what Rashi is and why Rashi's script is different. In the Hebrew, that was always a challenge when you get to yeshiva. And if you're dealing with that, by the way, out where you are, if you're getting into the Hebrew and you're intimidated by Rashi, this is a side point, irrespective of the class, don't worry. Rashi script just comes. You will get it. But again, why is Onkelos here? What is he that he's not Rashi? Isn't Rashi the main guy? So why do I need Onkelos? Where does he come from? The Chumash is the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses, written in Hebrew. Rashi's commentary, Rashi's was called a Rishon. The medieval rabbis, he was the first, not literally the first, but he's of the first and greatest of the Rishonim. I personally tend to call them the poets of Torah law. I find medieval literature in Torah of the most beautiful words of Torah to learn. Not because it's actually poetic. In short, it's not exactly beautiful as in the river and the moon run, and not like that. It's great because the language of Rashi, as you've probably heard, he has divine inspiration, Ruach HaKodesh. It's just beautiful language. In Hebrew, you can do so many things with Rashi's language. You can say maybe he refers to this, maybe he refers to that. It's malleable. It's just a wonderful experience to get into the language at that level. So that's the beauty of Rashi's commentary. And Rashi, of course, covers the entire Torah. In this respect, the written Torah. So Onkelos now, he actually is much older. Again, as we said, he's a Ger. My personal opinion, it's only an opinion. This is one of the times I'm giving an opinion. I'm not sure if he converted. He may have. I know everyone's going to say Ger convert for Onkelos. I'm not convinced. I would love to find more on him. I don't know much about him, the person, what type of Ger he was, but what he has done is he is giving us the most fantastic Ger Code ever, and that I've found so far in my extensive research ever. The Torah was obviously given in a prophecy to Moses, Mount Sinai in Hebrew, the holy language. With that comes the translation of the Torah, and the translation is by nature a commentary at the same time. So when you see English and it says convert for Ger, right? That was a translation, one possible translation, and perforce that translation is a commentary. That maybe the Ger we're talking about in this particular place, wherever that may be, it could be the author would be saying a Ger convert. But it is never meant to be authoritative, right? The convert in English, one commentary view, right? That's all 70 faces of Torah. That doesn't happen most of the time, if not all the time. Onkelos then is the one who was blessed and merited to bring down the tradition of the Aramaic translation / commentary to the Torah itself. So when God gives the Hebrew prophetic Torah to Moses, and we say, Bereshis bara Elokim, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And I say, I don't know what that means. What does it mean, Bereshis bara Elokim? So I mean, I was going to say in Hebrew maybe it means with beginningness, one of the names of God created the world. I mean, I don't know. So you go to Onkelos. We're not talking Kabbalah here, per se. We're not talking gematrias. Just what do those words mean? So you go into Onkelos, and he'll tell you exactly. If I remember correctly, this is very interesting, actually. I use that as an example. It's with how does he say it? This is one of the better ones I learned. With it's implying that the creation was always there. With a primordial creation, God created the world. Right? That's how Onkelos translates it. Or one take of how to read that Onkelos. So he's giving you the reading, the reading in the Aramaic that contains a natural commentary. Because he's not just translating word for word. Right? In the beginning. It doesn't do that. He's giving you a little shift and shake here and there to guide you with a commentary / translation. Now that was before the Rishonim. The name, obviously, the name itself is coming from, let's say, the fact that he's a Ger, Onkelos. It's not, his name isn't Moshe. And that's his job. His job was to encapsulate the Torah on this level. Now, at that face value, we don't know, I mean, just for the sake of the article, we don't know what that means. I don't really have any inclination. I just read it. If I even do, most people neglect it. It's a very neglected commentary, except for when you read the idea, the custom, that you should read the Parashas twice and once with translation of Onkelos. Some say you can do it with Rashi, but as I mentioned, Rashi is the commentator, and Onkelos gives you the translation / commentary in one shot. And a lot of people learn Aramaic skills by the Onkelos endeavor to learn the Parsha that way. But there's a big chunk of missing information of what is he really coming to do? Why do I really need or want Onkelos? It's not very attractive. I know you very rarely hear, hey, listen, I got a really good shot in Onkelos. I don't think I've ever heard that once in a long time of learning. I don't think I've ever heard someone say that to me. As a thing, you know? But that's the revelation we want to give here. Is Onkelos is, not only is it a chutzpah, people don't say, I have a really great thing to tell you in Onkelos. The entire Onkelos is probably that. Right? The entire Onkelos is probably an amazing wealth of little subtle distinctions in language that if you got into it, it would literally blow your mind. Why? Because he is encapsulating the entire light of the Torah. Imagine that. And you say, but no, he's not. No, he's not. It's just like English. It's just like the art scroll. And the answer is it's not. There's much more to Onkelos. In our Parsha, Parashas Behar, is a great, if not the best, example of Onkelos shining bright. We all know that there is the Ger of the Torah. Now I'm going to explain how Onkelos becomes great with the Ger, or in his commentary, period. Almost 100 mentionings of Ger in the Torah. Onkelos' job is going to be to really set the task, translate, and settle the score with Ger. He is the guy who translates the Torah, and we never thought maybe we should go to Onkelos and find out how he translates it. But this is the problem of the Ger. Every time the Ger comes into our world in a verse, how many of us actually care? Right? Hey, you're Korban Passover, we're going to be the temple, you, the Levite, the Cohen, the orphan, and the Ger. And everyone says the orphan, the Levite, you know, but the Ger, not really. He's kind of like the ox and the donkey, right? Like in Shabbos, you rest your maidservant and your friends and your cousin, and your neighbor, your all these people, and then your donkey and your cow, the Ger's probably with them, right? And he's an accident that he's here, and we don't really take it seriously. You know, you were strangers in Egypt. Not really. We were Jews there. And this is the mindset. So we never think, A, that he matters, B, that he comes 100 times. Every parsha you can find Ger material. I've proven that. And the very last thing to accomplish is, what does Ger mean? Nobody ever thought to translate Ger. How fantastic is that? So now we will. Onkelos comes and translates the Giora. And you'll say, great, I don't know what Giora means. And you'll say, oh, come on, it means Ger. Everybody knows that Ger is a Ger. You know, there's no fantastic revelation. Ger, Gior, Giora, Gayer. Every time in the Torah we find all the permutations of Ger. This guy in Rome converted into Judaism, but in the Hebrew it was Litgayer, Mitgayer, all these different versions. And nobody ever thought, do the different variables, one letter off, one letter here, does it mean anything or matter? Everybody will tell you, no, it doesn't. And they're wrong. And I'll tell you an example of how they're wrong. Rashi gives you the Peshat of Torah, the simple meaning of Torah, right? Everyone will say, yes, Rashi's the Peshat, always. He says it over and over in his commentary. Only he doesn't. Not even once. And you can check me on that. He says, I'm coming now, Lafi Pshuto. You'll say, Pshat, Pshuto. What's the difference? It makes all the difference. Because when you learn the Ger, and particularly of Onkelos, you're actually going to be coming to learn Pshat now. Boker Tov. And when you learn Rashi, you're not learning Pshat. I'll give you an example of what Rashi does, which is called Lafi Pshuto, how it's not Pshat. The pasuk says, the verse says, the boy crossed the road. Right? It's in the book of, I'm making this up for context, it's in the book of Doors. Right? The book of Doors. The boy crossed the road. Onkelos would say it means In Aramaic, he would say the boy, with a connotation, he was 12 years old, not bar mitzvah. There's another word for boy that means that. Crossed the road. So a young boy crossed the road. That's Onkelos. And an example. Rashi would say, this is a great verse. This is a great verse. Did you know that young boys that are 12 years old that cross the road is the same boy in the tractate Yoma? And that those boys cross the road on the way to the temple? And in the halakha there's the same? Rashi would be telling you, you thought there's just a young boy crossing the road. And Rashi is saying, don't think that this young boy is a one-time spectacle in this verse. There are many young boy scenarios in the verses. In Tractate Yoma it talks about it. Over here it talks about it. That's Lefi Pshuto. He's telling you there's a latent meaning in the verse from an oral tradition that you would never have gotten on your own from reading it. Never would have figured it out. So it's there, but you couldn't see it. That's not Pshat. That's called Lefi Pshuto. And this is qualified in Rashi. Again, Pshat means you understand literally what's going on. So Onkelos now is coming to explain to you all these things about Ger. And the Pshat is, and the simple meaning Pshat, same word, simple meaning is Pshat. All the different nuances of Ger matter. Pshat and Pshuto are not the same. Right? All the different versions and variables of Gerim have differentials. When Onkelos calls him a Giura, and I don't know what that means right now, it just sounds like Ger. That's all I care about. Sounds like Ger. So when you go right into Onkelos, without anything else, read it, Giura, 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 Giura. Each time there's a Ger, and it's going to go right over your head. Ger is Giura. So when you see Giura in the Talmud, you'll say, ah, Ger. And your art scroll translated as convert. Convert is Ger, it's Giura. This is how you get bad learning. You just mush it all together, and it's all the same thing. But what do we know of in life that is all the same thing? Right? Words have meaning in connotation and context. And we speak with words. Many words. For a reason. We have intentions when we speak with words. If I say, hey, that's great. If I say, it's okay. Different meaning. Don't just say it's all the same thing. Onkelos is coming to teach us how to learn the Torah of Pshat. Simple meaning. By understanding words as commentary / translation. And in our Parashas, as I mentioned, the Ger comes at a fantastic time. He calls the Ger, and if I'm not mistaken, 25:47 is the verse that we're talking about. He calls them oral vetotav, the uncircumcised dweller. In the Hebrew, you know this guy as the Ger Toshav. What? What? A Ger Toshav is an uncircumcised dweller? I've never seen, you'll say, I've never seen that translated that way. And there's how many words in the Torah, and how many times are you going to really inspect Onkelos Hebrew, Onkelos Hebrew, and really make a point to identify and isolate these nuances. So it goes right over our heads. Bringing the fact that it's Ger, it really goes over our heads. Nobody's inspecting the Ger Toshav in the Onkelos. You don't get more random than that. Nowhere in the universe will you get more random than that. But he says it. And the reason why he says it is because he's saying the Ger here is not your regular Ger. Right? The convert, the Ger Tzedek, dweller, all the different variables that we're going to get into. This guy, he's the Noahide, 7-law follower who has not been circumcised. And nobody else. Nobody else. So you take this big word of Ger, or maybe even it's a little word, and you say, Onkelos calls him a Ger Toshav this, and not like a convert. Go figure. He's eccentric. You'll say he's a minority opinion. You'll say we don't paskin like him. And when you say things like that, it just, again, you're admitting it right over there. And here, we're going to get into why. There are, as we said, almost 100 Ger in the Torah. And thank God in our Parsha, we have the luxury of having a fantastic Ger moment in Behar. The Ger becomes destitute. You should support him. The mitzvah of sustenance and vitality to the Ger. Right? We learn it from here, and in conjunction with give the nevela improperly or unkosher meat to the Ger as a form of charity, tzedakah, and that's the basis that we give vitality. These two work together. And it falls in our Parsha. Before we get to Onkelos, now let's stop with Onkelos. Onkelos is over. Go back and think of the old Ger Code from the old lectures. Right? Think back. We're going to open up the Malbim commentary in Sifri or Sifra, which is the one that's on Vayikra. The Sifri commentary are the Talmudic scholars of the Talmud that put together a commentary of the Torah. The whole discussion is about commentary, translation. That's the theme, if you haven't noticed. The translation commentators. They put together an original work about the same time as Onkelos. And they developed this idea that when they see Ger in a verse, they'll look at the words in the verse and they'll ascertain what's the nature of this Ger. Right? If it's betochechem or benenu, is he amongst you? Is he with you? Is he in you? Is he brand new? Has he been here before? Does he have a long tenure with you? Is he circumcised? Is he not circumcised? Is he clearly a convert? Clearly not a convert? Is he native? Every pasuk, every verse will give you little footprints, little trails to let you know who's who. So the commentary on the commentary, Malbim is a later rabbi of the 1800s who writes a commentary on the Sifri, right? I would say Sifri, but they sound similar. Every book of the Torah has a different commentary by this set, right? What's it called? Unknown. It's called Sifri, Sifra, Mechilta, Torah's Kohanim, and that's along those lines. I always forget them because they sound the same to me. But they put together the commentary. It's a halachic, midrashic commentary of the Torah written by the sages of the Talmud. And we find out that today we don't exactly go by their rendering of law, but it's classic Chazal. Classic Chazal. Just as authoritative in content as the Talmud itself. In fact, Rashi quotes this work often. And so does the Vilna Gaon. Every major authority quotes this source. Just like we say, we don't poskin like the Rambam, but we do. Right? We don't by definition, but you'll see in the Shulchan Aruch, the law of Torah, most of the time the law goes like the Rambam. So we don't poskin, we don't render law from the Sifri, but it weighs itself into our tradition 100%. The Malbim then explains the Sifri, explaining why does it say Ger Tzedek here? Why does it say Ger Toshav here? Why blah blah blah? Every time he goes in to say, well, it's a code and the hey before the word Ger. It means Hager. That could be Ger Tzedek. It's very twisty, turny, upside down, very hard to grasp. And unless you're really interested in ironing out the Ger world, which thank God today our Gerim coming back to allow us the gift and merit to doing this. Otherwise, it's just not. Who finds it? It's a needle in the haystack. The Malbim explains how the code works. He says every ger is unique in the verses, needs to be learned by itself, brand new, devoid of any association with another ger reference. You learn pshat, not pshuto, pshat, the simple meaning of the verse to ascertain the type of ger. And there is no ger tzedek at all in the Torah. Never written, not once. So every convert who calls himself a ger tzedek and he holds by that as if it's authoritative of the Torah, it doesn't exist. There's ger and there's ger toshav. Nothing else. No other word exists for this concept. The rabbis then, by understanding the code, how can you say there's nobody else? A ger and a ger toshav. What if one's circumcised? What if one isn't? What if he converted? So what you're saying is that there are a lot of gerim. Many kinds of gerim. The rabbis then have, in the Chazal era, the oral Torah, developed a code and language of gerim. Ger tzedek, we could call him a convert, a non-Jew with circumcision, one who came from very far. Many usages of the ger tzedek. And the code comes out to say when and where and how and why we use the words we use to explain what we explain. And it's very complicated. One ger tzedek here could be a convert. Here it could be a guy who came from very far away. And you say, how would you ever know? Because why would you compare the two? You forgot rule number one. You don't make a law sweeping over all the different gerim. He was what he is. He's what he is. And they're not related. Ever. What you do is you look in the verse and you learn each one uniquely. Now there's a very nice words I want to bring in here. Know these. Mute and reboy. Second. I got notes myself. Mute and reboy. There is something called precepts in learning. Right? There's like learning, there's the knowledge, but there are rules and laws in learning. And there's styles of learning and techniques in learning. One of the authors of this super commentary of law, the Sifri, Rabbi Yishmael, a contemporary of Rabbi Akiva. Every morning in prayer we say 13, how you say it? How you say it in English? The tools of exegesis, right? Of Rabbi Yishmael. You may be familiar with some of them. Some of them are a little bit more abstract. Kol v'chomer, right? Anybody hear of kol v'chomer? All the more so. I'll give you the classic definition of kol v'chomer. If you go to any yeshiva in the world, give this definition, they'll say, how'd you know that? I hate to say it, it's just so pathetic that I'm saying this, because it's so cliche. But this is what everybody learns in yeshiva, this one. If a 5-year-old can lift a 10-pound suitcase, what's the kol v'chomer? If a 5-year-old can lift a 10-pound suitcase, all the more so, a grown man can lift a 10-pound suitcase. Kol v'chomer. Everybody says that. And then they say, wait a minute, if a 5-year-old can lift a suitcase, all the more so, Arnold Schwarzenegger can lift a 1,000-pound suitcase. You say, no, you don't say that. That was too much. I don't know if Arnold Schwarzenegger can do that. And you don't have the right to put words in his mouth. But what you can say is, if a 5-year-old can lift a 10-pound suitcase, Arnold Schwarzenegger can lift a 10-pound suitcase. Kol v'chomer. So this is one of the techniques brought into learning the verses. And there's 13 of these, and there's another version. How many is it? I think 41, 42. There's a lost version. I'm dying to get it. If anybody knows where to get it, please tell me. Of a full, extensive Rabbi Yishmael exegesis chart of something towards 32, 30. A lot of them. A lot of them. This opens the door for learning on a rabbinic classic level. This isn't about opinion and logic and, hey, look, if we look at it this way, this is extremely rabbinic learning of the Talmud. If not entirely. One of the great gifts that comes out of it is mute and riboy. Most people think, if all the time in mute, right? If I say the lamp is over there, and another guy says no, it's over there, you say, it's an argument, and this guy's right, so it must be it's over there. Mute. He's wrong, he's right. Exclusion. It's an exclusive view. Riboy comes to say it's not an exclusion, it's an inclusion. They're both right. Well, how can an argument render them both right? In the case of the lamps, it's a little hard. With Gerim, it's awesome. The Ger in your gate goes to school on Tuesday, says the verse. And you say, that's a convert. For sure, it's a convert. I'm a convert. I go to school on Tuesday. That's it. And the Ger Toshav says, wait a minute. Rabbi, I go to school on Tuesday too. And everyone says, no, it says convert. Don't you know English? Convert. He goes to school on Tuesday. You say, but wait, I also go to school on Tuesday. It doesn't have to be an exclusion. Maybe, did you ever think maybe the verse meant two guys both went to school on Tuesday? Or three guys went to school on Tuesday? Maybe every ger in the world goes to school on Tuesday? Mr. Baal Tshuva, repentant of Judaism, who became religious yesterday, who is halachically called a ger, maybe he goes to school on Tuesday. There's no reason to say mute, at least most of the time. The ger, the reason why, the big $1 million question, why is it not a convert? Like, as a rule, the answer is, the Malbim tells you it's not a religious discussion. Convert, if you're going convert, you're saying it's a religious issue. He says it's not a religious issue. It's an algorithm, which fits very good with the whole Onkelos point of view of math, calculus, algorithm. How's it an algorithm? Every ger has X amount of variables. Right? Are you this? Are you this? Are you this? Are you this? If you get in the checklist of the verse, you're a ger. Right? The Korban Passover, the Passover offering, the ger amongst you eats. Convert? Anyone? Yes. Mr. Ger Toshav who got circumcised. You've been around for a while, right? But you're not Jewish. Are you in? Yeah, I qualify. Good. Okay, Noahide, no circumcision. Are you in? No. I didn't get circumcised. Okay, you're out. We're gonna give treif meat to the ger, and who's in? Right? And the convert says, "I'm in." You say, "What?" He says, "I'm a ger." You say, "You're not in here." He says, "But I'm a ger." You eat non-kosher meat? No. Chas v'sholom, no. So you're not in. But I thought you were a ger. He says, I am a ger, but I guess in this case I'm a Jew. Then you're not a ger. This verse is not calling you a ger. This verse is calling you a Jew. So go eat kosher meat with Jews. So who's involved? The Ger Toshav says, me. I'm involved. I eat non-kosher meat. We say, great, you're a ger. Mazel tov. And in fact, Onkelos will tell you that you're the uncircumcised ger. Is that right? We'll say, yeah. So the code works. The code works. And when it needs to be exclusion or all-encompassing, it's an algorithmic equation, it's not a religious discussion. If you fit the criteria, you are a ger. If you don't fit the criteria, you're not a ger. So what does that make you if you're not? Whatever you are. A Nachri, a Jew, a Baal Tshuva, whatever you are. It's not a competition or philosophical discussion or religious debate. It's what are you? And every ger is different and needs consideration. Now, I'm going to throw this one in just as a bonus highlight issue. Right? In this week of learning, two major conditions came up in the tools of learning. What really goes between conversion and Ger Toshav? Right? Why would one choose to be a convert or a Ger non-Jew. One can make a philosophical idea from missionary work, right? A missionary might say, shouldn't I go make conversions all over the world and make the whole world Jewish? Wouldn't that be great? And you find, where would be such a precedent to do something like this? You say, B'di'evid. B'di'evid is the opposite of lechachila. Now here's two words you must know. B'di'evid, lechachila. B'di'evid means in that it was done. Lechachila is coming to say the optimal way. Okay? Somebody wants to convert, and they have no rabbi around, and let's say that Moses came and said, hey, you know what, you should convert. You say, really, Moses? He says, yeah, God told me with prophecy, you're a Jew. All you gotta do is go in the mikveh. And she goes in the mikveh, and she converts, and she says, Moses, I forgot what to do to really make a conversion. I don't know if I did it right. He says, don't you worry. B'di'evid, that you dunked and you didn't do all the stuff that the rabbis in the court would make you do, it works anyways. You're Jewish. B'di'evid, right? It's not the optimal way. You didn't cover all the checklists like the algorithm type stuff, but you did enough, right? And the Torah is lenient enough that it says, hey, you know what? I know you made a mistake. You didn't know what to do. You were nervous. You're Jewish anyways. She says, thanks, Moses. Have a nice day. Lechachila says, hey, this guy wants to convert. And you say, what do I do? You say, well, do it right. Go sit down with a rabbi in a synagogue, learn, take on the mitzvahs, do it right. Take on all the right stuff. Lechachila. Lechachila, the right optimal way. No questions, and you don't want to call rabbi, I'm not sure if I did it right. Do it right. Cover your checklist. So when dealing with conversion and Ger Toshav type stuff, what the Torah does not like is when people do B'di'evid just to be lazy or to get by on the minimum. Therefore, even though in our case we said Moses came with prophecy because he knew whatever in the hypothetical situation, you don't look in the Torah and say, okay, I don't have to do very much, so I won't. I'll do the most dodgiest, shadiest stuff, and I'm Jewish. I wanted to be a Jew, and here we go, I'm Jewish. I did the bare minimum. Right? That's not responsible Torah. To just do it because you can. Whereas the responsible approach is lechachila. But we saw there is a place for it. When it was done, it was done. Right? Let's say you're going to give charity. And there's a certain way to do it, right? You have to do the hokey pokey, turn yourself around, whatever it is. And you say, Rabbi, I forgot to do the hokey pokey. He says, don't worry. What you did was enough. We like you to do the hokey pokey, but you didn't. But it's okay, it's accepted. So when you give charity, do the hokey pokey. Do it lechachila. You say, why would you want to do it lechachila if I can do it b'di'evid? Why should I go the extra 9 yards and do all this stuff when I can just do this way? I don't want to do the hokey pokey. Because maybe going the extra mile for God is worth it. Maybe not cutting corners and using synthetic cheese on pizzas because you can, right? And scaling back and this and this. Maybe going a little bit extra effort is worth it. I'll give you another example. On Shabbos, you're not supposed to do things that are against Shabbos, particularly when you eat. Even though you're allowed to. You can say there's a permission slip that when I eat food on Shabbos, I'm allowed to pick out the corn from my salad that has peas and carrots. The Torah lets me. And you say, yeah, okay, it does. You're not going to die if you do it. But is that really Shabbos? In the spirit of Shabbos, to sit there and pick out your corn? Right? You're trying to be spiritual and take in the moment and have a conversation and enjoy it. And you're busy picking out every piece of corn. You miss the point of Shabbos. Because technically you can. You can do a lot of things. But let's say I'm eating my meal, and look, I can't stand corn, okay? I just can't. And there's like 2 pieces in there, I take them out. You say, okay, you did it. Alright, you can do it, you did it, no worries. No worries. That's lechatchila b'diavad. If somebody wants to convert b'diavad, and Moshe Rabbeinu didn't come to tell you with prophecy, it's probably not the greatest thing to do. But if you were in the middle of conversion and something went wrong, you were in the mikveh and Iran struck with a nuclear bomb, and you wanted to die a Jew before you died, right? And you say, "Hey, was it kosher? Because I was too afraid to say the blessing before the nuclear bomb hit. Am I Jewish? Yes. In a fictitious universe, yes. You were in there. It's enough that what you did. You died. You fulfilled your mission to do what you did. So does that mean everyone runs out and hope for a war with Iran with a nuclear bomb, and you do it this way? No. It's not the optimal way to go. You should do it the best way possible that you can. And the Torah outlines the most responsible ways to go. And these are the principles of learning, right? When in an argument, we're saying there's exclusive and inclusive. It's a greater revelation to say that a ger has many angles. He's a convert, or he's this. And you say, I don't know, my art scroll translated as convert, I'm done. Alright, b'diavad, you're right. Okay, yes, you're right, this was a convert here. But, lechatchila, the best way is to open your mind and say, there are many gerim here. Very important thing, lechatchila b'diavad. Especially with so many people coming out and into the Noahide world. And there's so many things and availabilities and things going on. What do I do? The answer, what you do is you don't take the easy way out and the low approach. Do it responsible. Do it responsible and know what you're doing. Thus the code is coming. We have it at least the times of the Chazal. And we're saying there are many Gerim, right? So there is a code, there are Gerim type, there are converts, there are Ger Toshav, all these kinds of Gerim. Now, back to Onkelos. Remember our friend Onkelos. So why do I need Onkelos? I have the Ger Code, I have all this stuff. Onkelos is coming to say, you had to learn the Ger Code in the very hard way. Mobim and Ger Tzedek, and then you're saying, wow, the Ger Tzedek's a non-Jew, and also a Jew, and that was only explained by a reboy, and not a mute, and is it even lechatchila to call this non-Jewish Ger Tzedek, the Ger Tzedek a non-Jew? Is that lechatchila? Is it optimal, or is it only because you can? Is there a precedent to call him that? I mean, what's going on? So you have to come through this big, huge, twisted world, make sense out of it. Why? You say, okay, why did I do that? Every day my learning partner, Chaim, asks me, why do you bother this? Why do you want to structure all this and the this and the that and this? And this one's a Ger Tzedek non-Jew, this one's a Ger Tzedek Jew, this one's got this thing going. Why do you do it? You're confusing the Noahides. Why do you do it? I say, because it's true. Because when you know it, then you can understand Onkelos. Just like Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the analogy of this world. You know, the understanding is like the mother, and the wisdom is like the father, and this is like the this, and this is like the that, and this is like the that. And you have a million vessels. This is like that. The oral Torah is like the earth, and the written Torah is like the heaven, and all this stuff. Why? Because when you know it, finally you can just understand life and let go of it. It's an analogy to help you be strong enough in your soul to recognize life with God. The Ger Code of old is a system to allow you to propel up into Onkelos' code. And that code is, there's a Ger, and he is called Giora. And I don't know what Giora is. Still, I said that. I don't know. So here's what it is. We do know. When you look at where he translates Ger proper as Giora, first thing you'll notice is it's a reboy. Because inclusion, when I would know from the old code that this is a convert in potential and a non-Jewish Ger also for a fact. So it's not one or the other. It's both, and he calls it Giora. So how does one become this Giora? And now he has a lot of variables. It's not, again, same law applies. You don't make one connection to all of them. There's two stages of becoming a Ger. Two. You picked up and you left where you were yesterday. That's one. And you said, I'm going to go become a convert. I'm going to go become a Noahide. Whatever you set out to do. Somebody living in a land that is not of his own. You're following that path. And you settled. You said, okay, I picked up from Miami and I set out and I went to Jerusalem at the wall and I'm going to convert. You did it. You were in motion, you were in process, you sat down, you converted, and you're done. You say, I am now a Ger. I have converted, this is me. This is how I interact with my world. Another guy says, I want to come and leave my place in Idaho, and I want to go be a Noahide. Wherever. So he's learning, and he's picking it up, and he rejected idolatry, and he's going around, and 5 years later he says, thank the good Lord, I'm a Noahide. And he's there for a good long while. The first part, you're picking yourself up and going into process, and then you settle. Once you settle, you're a Ger. That's what it means. You are Giora. You're there. Right? You are now a Ger. You're settled into what you have endeavored to become. Thus the Giora, the one that's Ger here. So in this particular instance of every particular verse mentioning a Ger, at which level of Ger are you? What are you being a Ger in? That's how you translate that. And all Gerim have this ability to become a Ger. So a Giora, I'm in a status of dwelling. That's what he's saying. I'm dwelling, I'm Gering, I'm being a Ger. Each verse is different. And the fantastic part of Onkelos, here's the biggest crux of this discussion tonight. We said how great a reboy is. You don't want to say, not this one, not that one, it's all together. Onkelos comes and breaks the mold and says, guess what? It's a miyut. It's a miyut. Not a reboy. Right? Most of the time in the Torah, when it is a miyut, there's no way of knowing that. You just have to kind of feel it out. It's, okay, it's probably not a convert, probably not him or him, it's him. Process of elimination. He says, no process of elimination. This is oral totav. The uncircumcised is dwelling with you. Nobody else. That's utterly fantastic. In his translation / commentary of the Ger Toshav, he breaks shape, brings in a brand new word, and says he is uncircumcised dwelling with you. Onkelos gives you a more authentic ancient Torah code or Ger code than the traditional Ger code we've had for the Sifri. He's learning the verse, and he's using the verse to explain exactly each one as it is. Whereas the other guys, they don't really let you know why they said, this guy's a Ger Tzedek. What, a convert? Then you got to say, you go way around the universe, and then you find out a Ger Tzedek can be a non-Jew. That took you 20 years. I don't have 20 years. The Ger code in the Sifri is almost impossible. Why do you think the Gerim, no one's teaching Ger? It's almost impossible. Unless you live it, breathe it, and teach it, and invest in it every day. That's what it's taken me, at least, to get the Ger code. Every day. It's not impossible, but that's the level of effort that I know I took. Maybe you can do it faster. But when you see the word Giora, or the uncircumcised, you won't appreciate it unless you've had that whole Ger Code come in you. And once you've had the whole Ger Code in, and you see, the uncircumcised, you say, wow, wow, he just left out everybody. You just got the calculus. You just saw the algorithm in his commentary right in front of you. And that's the greatness of Onkelos. He is the perfect Ger Code. Right? Perfect Ger Code. Every verse, he takes what's in the verse and he explains it. By the offering of the Passover, he says, Giora. And you'll say, Giora? That could be every Ger in the world. And the Noahide can't do a Korban Pesach. So continue with the Onkelos. You keep going in the Onkelos, and what does he say? He says, in the Torah, what does the Torah say? By the way, he has to be circumcised. So what does the Onkelos say? By the way, he's got to be circumcised. The verse answered itself. But sometimes the verse doesn't answer in that way. So he changes the word if he has to. Every Ger in the Torah, Onkelos gives you the perfect definition. In our Parsha, we are Gerim dwelling in the land. Jews in Israel are called Gerim dwelling in the land. God does not call them Jews. What does Onkelos say? This is great. He calls them resident dwellers. If that's not what it is, God calls Jews the resident dwellers in Israel. You're resident, right? You live in the land, and you're dwelling here. Literally, he gives you the literal, perfect definition. And he changes the words. He doesn't use the word ger or giora, or whatever it is at all. Every time he does it perfect. So you have the old school Ger Code, and Onkelos perfects it to a whole new level. But it's backwards. Really, Onkelos came first. And the Sifri that had precedent of the Ger Code by unpacking Onkelos. But it's very confusing. So you have to learn the confusing, and then you can go back and appreciate the Onkelos Code. But if you go right to Onkelos, it's just right over your head. Unless you're a prophet. The whole point, the beauty of the Parsha, and the Onkelos and the Code. This is part 2 of my bonus edition for this class. A lot of people think in the Jewish camp, isn't the point of the world that it should be all Jewish? All Jews. I don't know why they're not Jews. After Sinai, there should have been only Jews. And then the Ger message is, no, there was Sinai, and the Noahide from pre-Sinai joined with Sinai, and then after Sinai, by connecting to Sinai, the non-Jew has Shabbos, like the Ger Toshav, and all these things from the Sinai gift. Versus the whole world should be Jewish. The answer is a very simple answer. The Torah writes the word Ger. And by the deeper learning, we know that, yes, it's a convert. And it's a reboy. Most of the time. And that reboy gives you all the breadth of Gerim. Onkelos is the one we can thank for that Ger Code. And the levels are invested in the verses brought out by Onkelos the Ger, and he has the eternal legacy of Onkelos. As he has given that eternal legacy for all Gerim ever. Forever. So yes, there will be Jews forever in the world, and there will be forever Gerim in the world. Some of those Gerim could convert to Judaism. Some of them will remain Noahides. Some of them will be every type of Ger. And it's eternal. So the whole idea of being a missionary to bring the whole world to Judaism as Jews, B'di'evid, in face of Lechatchila, Yes, you could make the whole world Jewish. In theory. And that would also be a horrible crime of humanity. Besides the fact that God won't let it happen. Because the Ger is in the Torah. Maybe you could argue the whole world be converts, but then it's a mute. We know from Onkelos it's a reboy. The Ger Toshav exists. The Ger is eternal. Onkelos' legacy was to make that happen. And as the Parsha ends, you will fear my Shabboses, and you will fear my temple. The Behar in Kabbalah explains that this language of Shabbos, Shabbosai, how do you say Shabbosai, the two tufts, implies the Jewish Shabbat observance and the Ger Shabbos observance together. So the whole parsha about this Ger Code ends, now what? Again, there's the Shabbos, Ger Tzedek, 10 Commandments for the Jewish convert and the non-Jewish Ger. The biggest proof of all, the matter of the world to come, right? Everyone says the Jew has a better world to come than the non-Jew. That is a false statement. And the answer is very simple. We're all here right now in this world, trying to fix it. And what the Ger lives for the most, and the Jew together, is one joint effort. Universal humanity, the Jew and the Ger, and all these things together for the way the Parsha ends, very simply. The Ger exists and will always exist in the merit that he takes the last verse of our Parsha the most serious. You will fear my Beit HaMikdash. The Gerim are an eternal remembrance to the Jewish people, to the world, for themselves. Our job is to focus on the repair of this world, work together, and to bring the building of the third temple. May it be built soon in our day. Amen.